If it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about the Scottish Open LIV stop in Spain this week ahead of the Open and the absolute shock to the golf world that Keegan Bradley is going to captain Team USA in the Ryder Cup next year. But first, we have to start with 2 weeks of action. In case you were living under a rock, Nate, get us caught up on everything that happened on the PGA Tour, the Rocket Mortgage, and John Deere Classic.
Yeah, we had some fun finishes these last couple of weeks. Cam Davis 2 weeks ago at the Rocket Mortgage, correct? Beat Akshay Bhatia. Looked like Akshay had control of that tournament, then some stumbles down the stretch, and Cam Davis capitalizes. And then we moved last week to the Rocket Mortgage. We had another 59 on tour. Hayden Springer goes really low in that first round. Not able to capitalize off of it and get the victory. But Davis Thompson, who gets his first win on tour, really good story for Davis Thompson. He played pretty well throughout that tournament, gets into the Open Championship and capitalizes off that first win. So pretty cool story from Davis. But one of the coolest things for me, Josh, is that the 20-year-old Luke Clanton just continues to play well. The rising sophomore at Florida State. T2 at the Rocket Mortgage and T10 at the John Deere. Those might be transposed. But he just kept playing well and just has the momentum going. And it's pretty cool to see a young guy. We talk about these young guys, how they have no fear on the PGA Tour, and Luke is one of them, certainly still playing well.
They can play. What do you make of Bhatia's faltering there at the very end? Obviously, he had left the putt on 18, super short, the Rocket Mortgage. He had made a couple of those, I don't want to call them comebackers because they weren't comebackers, but he cleaned up a couple of those earlier in the back nine on Sunday, but then, he misses the one on 18. A lot of people gave him credit for how open he was about, the pressure afterward. I thought that was pretty cool, kind of seeing that side of it where, he was pretty forthright about, the situation and what it meant. Do you think it's something that sticks with him, or do you think it's something that's behind him pretty quickly and we see him contending again here soon?
Well, it was really cool to see actually kind of face the music after the round. He had his first 3-putt of the week on that final 72nd hole, which is just crazy. I mean, this is a couple weeks removed from Rory McIlroy spinning the tires and flying out of the U.S. Open after he misses a couple short putts. So I think that goes into a little bit more. We talk about it a little bit more after what happened with Rory. But yeah, it's cool to see a guy face the music. I think at the end of the day, Akshay believes, and his camp believes that he's going to be a better player because of this happening, and I also agree with that. So, having to battle some of those low lows, making your first 3-putt of the week and not getting into the playoff or even the playoff is definitely a low for Akshay, but he'll certainly be back. He's got game.
Yeah, we have to absolutely talk about the Ryder Cup situation here. Keegan Bradley will captain Team USA next year in 2025 after apparently Tiger Woods turned it down. We've learned that because of his schedule and things like that, he didn't want to go forward with it. So he turns it down, and the powers that be turn around and give it to Keegan Bradley. Thoughts?
Yeah, Josh, this is an absolute stunner for me. I didn't expect Keegan Bradley's name to even be thrown in the hat. And I don't think a lot of golf people really also thought that. I mean, Keegan Bradley, we're a year removed away from him getting, I don't know if you want to call it snubbed off the Ryder Cup team from last year, right? We had Keegan Bradley go on to the second season of full swing and be really emotional about not making that Ryder Cup team. We had Keegan Bradley, who has been at the Ryder Cup before. He still hasn't unpacked from that last Ryder Cup that he's been at. He's shown the picture of the suitcase still packed up from that last Ryder Cup. So it's certainly a very emotional time for Keegan Bradley in the last year, and now he's the captain. So it's just out of nowhere, Josh. But it is interesting that it's him. On the good side, we did want to see something different with the Ryder Cup. We talked about how it can be a boys' club and stuff. So this is certainly different. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do in New York next year. I don't know if I necessarily love the pick. I don't necessarily hate it. I'm kind of in the middle with both sides here as Keegan Bradley gets ready to captain Team USA.
Yeah, before we came on here, I did a bit of a deep dive just to see, like, I wondered what does the average Team USA captain look like? And I went back through the last 10, going back to the late 90s. And, they have a combined 183 wins on tour. That averages out to 16 career wins each. Only one time since 99 has Team USA gone with a captain that had fewer than 10 wins. Zach Johnson had 12. Tom Lehman had 5 in 2006 when he was captain. This feels weird for so many reasons because Keegan, he's the 19th best player in the world. He's 38 years old. He's clearly on the second. He's clearly in the twilight of his career. He's only got a handful of wins. He has a major, but it came way back in 2011. And, he hasn't really shown himself to be one of the dominant players or even really one of the players that is sort of viewed as or was before he was named captain, viewed as like a future captain, right? Like I feel like we're at least like 5 or 10 years away from him being that. And it's strange. It feels a bit odd to me. It leaves me with the question of, what are we trying to do? What is Team USA trying to do? Are they trying to make up for, him getting snubbed last year? Is this, is this a hard reset? Does it work as a hard reset? I don't know. I'm not really sure. A lot of people said last year that he should have been on the team because of the energy that he would bring, because of the desire that he had, the passion that he had for Team USA. And I'm wondering if that translates into a captain. And if you're the 19th best player in the world, odds are you're also going to be eligible you're going to be on the team, right? Like, this is just so puzzling on so many different levels that, like, beyond his resume, which to me doesn't really feel like Ryder Cup captain resume. Maybe had he been on that team last year and Team USA won or put up a fight, it'd be different, or I'd feel differently about it, but he didn't, and they didn't. And here we are. It just feels a little strange.
Yeah, it does. It definitely has the both feelings on both sides to me, Josh. It's just such a pivotal year for the Americans next year at the Ryder Cup. I mean, kind of doing a little bit of soul searching right after getting sort of, berated in the first couple of days by the Europeans last year. Almost pulled off the comeback, which would have been crazy, but they were pretty far back. So, but it's just such a big year. And Keegan Bradley, on the other hand, you talked about the emotion, Josh, and he has that sort of fire in the past Ryder Cups too. And then Josh, he makes all the New York connections, right? He went to St. John's. He always talks about how he snuck onto Bethpage Black and played the inside holes, right, and parked by the maintenance bar and stuff. So those stories are really cool, Josh. So he's definitely fits in that side. But yeah, I don't know. And then it kind of came out like, wow, I can't believe the Americans are going with someone outside the boys club in Keegan Bradley. And then it comes out that Zach Johnson actually made the pseudo call for Keegan to be the captain. He also actually made the physical call to tell Keegan he was the captain. So Josh, it's definitely interesting, and but it's at the end of the day, Josh, for me, if this totally blows up, if the Europeans run away with this Ryder Cup, there's going to be a lot of questions out of that camp. But if anything else happens, I think it's going to be okay. But if the Europeans really come out and stomp on the Americans next year at Bethpage, there's going to be some real questions in the Team USA camp.
As there should be in that scenario. You wouldn't expect it to be as much of a rout as it was last year. I know it got close, but let's be real. At no point did it really feel like, Team USA had a chance at winning this thing. Let's talk about Tiger's decision to, I don't want to say bail. He's not going to captain in 25. There's some thought that maybe he's going to captain in 27. Maybe that was part of the reason. We saw a couple, or at least I found a couple statements on social media yesterday talking about how, kind of came down to his schedule. He didn't really have time. He didn't really think it was going to be the right moment for him to do it with the other commitments that he has. Obviously, to me, that reads as, I'm busy negotiating the future of golf. Lay off. I can't captain this team. Do you see it that way, or do you see it any other way?
Yeah, I see it that way, but I also see it as if Tiger Woods wanted to do this, he would do it. I mean, he could put other things on the back burner if he needs to do it. This is the Ryder Cup in New York. This is a really one of golf's biggest events of the season, right? I mean, so much pours into what the Ryder Cup is, and if Tiger Woods wanted to be a part of it, he wanted to be the captain of this team, then he says that, and everyone steps away, right? And they name Tiger Woods the captain. But maybe he plans on in 27 when they travel to Ireland. I don't know. I don't know if he kind of left the door open in that statement with the PGA of America. He kind of said, maybe down the road I'll throw my hat in the ring. So maybe that's the pseudo plan they have Tiger Woods, trying to lead this team in 2027. But that's hard to look at because it's, you can't talk about the future until it happens, right? That's always a rule I believe in. And if you really wanted to bring Tiger Woods next year, you would. But Josh, at the end of the day, does the captain, how much does it change, right? If you go from a guy like Keegan Bradley to Tiger Woods, does that bring them over the hump? Who knows? That's hard to say, right?
I mean, that to me is that there's a clear answer to that question for me.
Yeah.
Guys are going to rally around Tiger. They're going to rally for Tiger. Keegan Bradley, I mean, you can make the nice guy argument. You can say he's, a player's player. You can say whatever you want about him. He's good for golf, but I don't necessarily see him as a guy who's going to, have this big impact. Like, he's not a big splash guy. And also, like, if Keegan Bradley is going to be the guy you go with, like, why do you announce now?
Yeah.
What on earth are you gaining from like, they announced this now. We have the Open coming up. I mean, like, what did you gain from announcing that he's going to be the captain? To me, it just, none of this makes sense. It doesn't seem to fit. And there's just a lot of questions about where this is going to leave Team USA, and how they're going to go forward. I mean, there are a few names that I can already think of that I think have played themselves off of the Ryder Cup. I don't see a scenario where Justin Thomas is on this next Ryder Cup team. I don't see a scenario where Jordan Spieth is on this next Ryder Cup team. Right. Ricky Fowler is not going to be on this next Ryder Cup team. If they are, and Keegan Bradley is the captain, the wheels have completely fallen off the bus.
Right. I will say a good thing about Keegan Bradley is, I'll say a good thing is that he did denounce that there won't be any dispersion between PGA and LIV. We saw that a little bit last year with Bryson, right? He wasn't playing as good as he is now, of course. I mean, Bryson's probably a shoo-in for the Ryder Cup team last year. It's nice to hear Keegan Bradley come out and say, there'll be no problem. If they're on the LIV Tour, and they're one of the 12 best American golfers in the world, then they're going to play. So that's nice to hear. And I think that's sort of refreshing, right? Yeah,
to me that quells that before we have to have that debate all over again.
Exactly.
That shuts that down, and the guys who are playing over on LIV are going to get just as much consideration as the guys playing on tour. It's good. I mean, Team USA cannot go without Bryson DeChambeau, even if he does absolutely nothing for the next 12 months.
Right.
You can't not take him on that team. Let's talk about maybe one of the most intriguing comments I saw after all this came out. Xander Schauffele, tweet by Brentley Romine on X.com, formerly Twitter. He said, quote, "I feel like Keegan would understand sort of when we need to get up, when we need to practice, when you need to do this, and hopefully dodge anything you don't have to do. Maybe that'll help us." He continued saying, quote, "Taking a bunch of photos all dressed up. There's 2 or 3 dinners that we have to go to that are kind of mandatory-ish. And I think if we cut down to 1 or 2 versus 3, that would be a really big deal." Again, that was Xander Schauffele reacting to the news that Keegan Bradley would be the captain of Team USA. What do you make of that? I have so many thoughts on this, but I'm curious what you think, Nate.
I have 2 main takeaways, I think. And the first one is just really Xander. I mean, this is I just got over saying how this is one of the biggest golf events of the year, an event where Americans love to watch, whether they be hardcore golf fans or just softer golf fans, right? This is a tournament where everyone galvanizes behind their country and roots for the other country, especially in a place like New York. I mean, it's going to be a very hostile environment for a lot of these European players. We know how the fans in New York are. And then secondly, why are we talking about this now? The Ryder Cup is over a year away, And why is Xander bringing this up at a press conference? And then also, Josh, to add on to that, why is Xander putting this out in the public over a year before the Ryder Cup? Why isn't he telling this to Keegan Bradley behind a shut door? They can kind of think about a plan of action for this if they do want to alter it at all. And then, Josh, maybe we get to the fall of next season and then this comes out, right? Or we get a year later and then this comes out, because it always seems to come out before the Ryder Cup that the Americans don't want to do that much team building stuff before it. We heard about it last year at the Ryder Cup too. So, but those are my two big main takeaways, Josh. Why are we starting this already? We were still a year away.
And Xander, mind you, found himself mixed up in all the Cantlay stuff last year because of how close they are.
Yeah, they're partners, right? Yeah,
they're close. And all I could, after I get done reading that, and I'm like, a big deal for who? A team that has historically not been able to come together and struggled being a team that has gotten basically just crushed every time they've gone to Europe now for the last 20 plus years. Maybe some of that gets erased if Team USA wins next year. But even if that happens, all eyes are going to immediately shift to 27 and whether they can get it done over there, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters now. It's if you're putting odds on it, I feel like it's a 60-40 advantage right now to the Europeans in general in 25. And to have a quote like this come out now, it already is setting up this narrative that Team USA doesn't want to be a damn team.
Right.
Like they don't want to do anything together. And, he mentioned that, or I might have seen from a couple other people who tweeted out kind of in response to that, the Europeans have said similar things about the functions leading up to it and things like that. But like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like going to dinner is the most taxing, challenging thing you're going to have to do over this week-ish of ceremonial events that lead to one of the most important golf events, allegedly one of the most important golf events on the schedule. I'm so sorry. Again, this all just to me boils down to Americans and the PGA Tour guys really have a hard time getting pumped up for this, I think, because they're mostly driven by money and they're mostly driven by the tournaments that pay, and not as much about the history and, the things that oftentimes they're talking about. The historical things that we hear players talk about mattering all the time, I don't think matter as much. And quotes like this seem to send that message and signal it more than anything else.
Luke Donald, the European captain, and some of the guys on the team got to be watching this quote and just kind of chuckling to themselves, right? We're in their head already, and it's over a year away. So it's just crazy to me that we're already talking about this, and Xander's talking to this with the press, right? He's talking, publicly about this and not talking about it behind closed doors with Keegan, which I think that kind of shows your hand a little bit and kind of shows like what you just said, Josh. It kind of shows what your team is thinking. If one guy's thinking it, I'm sure another guy's thinking it, and multiple guys are thinking it too, right? I think this is a matter that should be discussed within closed doors.
And also, not for nothing, but really dissecting what he's saying, taking a bunch of photos all dressed up. There's 2 or 3 dinners that we have to go to that are kind of mandatory-ish. I think if we cut it down to 1 or 2 versus 3, that would be a really big deal. One less dinner where you have to put a tux on. Yeah. That's going to be the difference between Team USA winning and Team USA losing. Huh?
All you gotta do is shake some hands, Xander. It's okay.
Stop. That's crazy. Just purely crazy. Let's talk about the tournament we have on our plate this coming week. The Genesis Scottish Open. This is a big week. For me, it's nice. We've had a few weeks here where we've kind of had a lull. Finally get to see some high-profile golf and names again. I'm really interested to see how Rory comes back. Obviously, he had an incredible performance at the Genesis last year. One of the most incredible shots at all, right? Period. But I'm actually watching Colin Morikawa the most this week. Yeah. I want to see how he plays because, a few weeks ago, I think we talked about how maybe he's, what is he coming into the Open? Is he a favorite? Should he be considered a favorite? On the odds book, I guarantee, of course, he's going to be in the top 5 or 10 in terms of odds coming into the Open. But to me, it would be a really cool signal to see him play well this week heading into the last major of the year, because, he's come really close now, basically 3 times.
Yeah, definitely, Josh. And I think Collins is around that 22-1 number this week. You don't have a couple guys playing. Scotty and a couple of those top guys aren't playing this week. Josh, I'm watching the most out of this tournament. It's just the fact that it's in Scotland and in the Open Championships in Scotland. We don't see it happen a ton. It happens sometimes where the golf tournament, the Scottish is played in the same country that the Open's played in. So, Josh, I think it's an even better tune-up than it normally is. We always talk about how the Scottish is a good tune-up for the Open, but this year even more so. So I think that's a big thing that I'm looking at, Josh, to see what players can kind of develop their game to the European style of play. If that wind starts picking up, you guys are going to start playing lower clubs and, going to be utilizing 2 irons like we saw last year with Rory hitting that shot on 18. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is just kind of tuning up yourself for Scotland. It's going to be very similar. It's going to play a lot similar to what the Open is like. So I would think that the guy that wins the Open Championship is going to play well here. Scotty could be the exception because he's not playing, but
16-1, 4th best odds in the field. Only Ludwig Eber is ahead of him there in the teens before you get down into the 2 favorites, Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele. I think it would just be very interesting to see, what are your expectations for Rory coming into this week? Do you think he's going to come out and be basically guns blazing, because we haven't really seen a lot of him since the Open? And what do you think about the questions that he may or may not get this week about that? Because he hasn't really had to answer a ton of questions yet about that situation and how it unfolded the last 3 holes.
I think the blow up for Rory McIlroy couldn't have come at a better time. Obviously, you never want to miss 2.5 footers on the PGA Tour. You never want to miss them in majors, right? And happen. But now he gets to sort of take the time off that there's kind of designed time in the PGA Tour schedule with those lower events, not play in those, sort of disappear his face from the media, right? And kind of go through it. And now he gets to play a pseudo home game, a tournament where he won last year. He's going to be a crowd favorite, not too far away from his home. So I think this is a really good spot for Rory McIlroy. I expect him to bounce back and be in contention. He's played well here historically, of course. And I think this is a really good spot for Rory to kind of do a hard reset in the last few weeks and kind of get himself back on track. Because let's not forget, Rory McIlroy was playing good golf. I mean, he's won an elevated event this year, played well at the U.S. Open, obviously, until those missed putts. He's played some very, very good golf this season. So I think this is a good spot for Rory. If you're going to have kind of that blow up right at the U.S. Open, and you're going to kind of have those weeks off, what better time in the schedule than right now to do it, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I got a question for you about the we're way too early look here at the Open Championship. This week obviously is important. It's a tune-up. It's an opportunity to see the kind of golf that, all these guys, the best players in the world, are going to be playing here for the next 2 weeks. But who's benefiting more from what's going to happen the next 2 weeks? Rory for playing, or Scotty Scheffler for taking one more week off and coming back totally fresh without any thoughts at all about how things did or didn't go at the Scottish Open?
Man, it's hard to pick against Scotty Scheffler, but I think it's Rory, and I think it's for a lot of those reasons I just discussed. He's able to kind of play off that home game feel, right? It's going to be a very pro Rory crowd this week. He's going to be able to grab some confidence, assuming he plays well this week, and sort of go through it. Scotty has proved a guy that likes to play back-to-back weeks. He likes to play a lot of golf, and we've seen him won, back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour this season when he won in Hilton Head after winning the Masters. So that's going to be interesting, Josh. Do you think a different way than I do, or are you thinking Rory as well?
You know what? Honestly, I think it's better for Scotty, because I think if I look at this 2 ways, Rory is objectively a favorite here at the Scottish Open. He could very well go out and win this weekend, and neither of us would be surprised. No one in golf would be surprised. And because of that, it's really hard to hold on to that. Like, he could win. The odds of him winning this week would be better than Scotty Scheffler's, in my opinion, if Scotty were in the field. The odds may not necessarily reflect that if he were in the field, but Rory, I think, is better built to play this kind of golf, obviously, because he's from there. Whereas looking at Scotty having another week off, there aren't going to be any bad thoughts. Not that there are any bad thoughts to begin with him, it seems. But he will very much be able to play into his game, go into this last major of the season on autopilot, basically. And I think he could seriously challenge in a week where I think this is probably the least likely of the four majors that people would think he'd win.
Right. Scottie Scheffler, 0 top fives in the Open Championship in his career. His best finish is a T8 back in 2021. So the undisputed best golfer in the world hasn't historically played. He's played pretty well. I think T8 is pretty good, but he hasn't really contended yet in an Open Championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. It's a different brand of golf. It's a different style of golf than any of these guys are used to playing. Before we get into our last topic of the day, which is going to be a little Olympic news, just a quick note here. LIV Golf, they're in Spain at the Real Club of Valderrama. What a name. Taylor Gooch is your defending champion there. It's going to be in the same time zone as the PGA, or I should say the PGA Euro event. So we're going to have lots of tape delay golf, I guess, on our televisions this week. I'm watching Bryson and Brooks because those are the two that I want to say. I don't really have any doubts about Bryson, but we had really high expectations for Brooks Koepka. And I kind of look at this as do or die for what we're going to make of his season. He hasn't really put it in gear, and I think he needs a strong showing at the Open to put himself back on the map in terms of being one of like the 2 or 3 best golfers over there. What do you think?
I'm looking at Rahm a little bit more, and I think that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is he's just in Spain, and that's his home country, and a country he's very, very emotional about too. So he's going to want to play well for himself, play well for Seve, and just kind of that whole thing he has going on. And the second thing is that injury, right, Josh? We didn't see Jon Rahm at the U.S. Open. He had to withdraw with that foot injury. Is that better? Is that the same? It's going to be really interesting to see what's kind of going on with John there and kind of how he propels himself into the Open Championship next weekend.
It's a very good question because I think, obviously the foot injury was kind of a short-term thing, but I'm curious now how much of this is becoming mental because he hasn't actually performed that well in LIV in general. So we'll see. You need to give us an update here on all this Joost news that we've had with the Olympics. He's out. He can't be in. He wins in court, but doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it starts 2 weeks ago when we talked about on the podcast about how the Netherlands is crazy and not letting some of their golfers play in the Olympics, right? I mean, Joost Luiten is no pushover, right? He's won 6 times in the DP World Tour and played in the Olympics before. There's a laundry list of reasons why he should be playing. So the Netherlands says, no, you can't play, and so Joost takes him to court, right? And he wins the court case, and he ends up, the committee ends up saying that he could play in the Olympics, and then we find out that his spot's already been filled in the Olympics. So, he's already been replaced by another player. So it looks like as of now, Joost is not going to be playing in the Olympics. And that's really sad, Josh, at the end of the day, because, and for the reason that I think it's the saddest is because last Olympics, I mean, Xander Schauffele won the gold, and then you had Rory Sabatini, who was high in OWGR with the silver medal, and C.T. Pan win the bronze medal, who was high in the OWGR. So it's not like you need to be a world beater to medal in the Olympics. I mean, Josh, it's golf. It's any given week, right? So I think you can really put on a show for your country, and it just if you have 4 good days of golf, right? So it's definitely on the sadder side that Joost isn't going to be playing in the Olympics. But it's interesting to see the fire from Luiten as he took that case to court, and he was posting on Instagram about it, and I was kind of following along with it, and you were really rooting for him, right? To be playing in the Olympics for his country, but unfortunately it looks like he's not going to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I'm looking at this thing like it's totally absurd. Like all of this has been totally absurd. But then on the other hand, you have to understand, right? Like the Olympics can't just like hold a spot.
Right.
Like when the country says X, Y, and Z players are not going to be participating, they've got to make their accommodations.
Yeah, especially when it's a month away too. It's pretty soon.
Yeah. So, it's a sad situation. I hope it's a situation that because of the media spotlight that's been put on this case, that it doesn't happen anywhere else, and that it's not it's not an issue moving forward.
Why can't we play with 61 players, Josh? What's the harm?
I don't get it. Like, I don't really understand anything when it comes to the Olympic golf world. Like, it seems like we have a unique set of rules for something that is already really well established for individual competition.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, golf is an individual competition. It's not like other sports where you need to limit the field down. It's very clear who is the best based on, or who is available and the best for each country without doing any work. And
if we don't even have that this year, I mean, we're missing a few of the guys that are on the top of their game, right? Between Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, aren't playing. So we already have problems at the top with this whole thing, and it just adds to it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't make any sense. But I think, again, these are the things that will be worked out here in the next, couple years.
Right.
This just goes back to, again, we've talked about it so many times, how important it is that a deal get worked out between the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and LIV Golf, the PIF, so that we can have crossover, we can have these guys playing together, and we can have a system that acknowledges all players from all tours and competitions, and not just the ones that are playing on the PGA Tour, because that's kind of the situation we've worked ourselves into here. But hey, that is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram for more this week. And remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. See you next time on Out of Bounds.